Hello and welcome back to Conquest Creations. In this video, we're going to talk about if it's worth getting into the Middle-earth strategy battle game. The Middle-earth strategy battle game, or SBG for short, is made by Games Workshop and it has been around for a very long time, releasing back in 2001 with the original Lord of the Rings movies. Now, Conquest Creations is a channel basically dedicated to this game and things related to this game. So it might seem like this is going to be a sales pitch, but my goal with this video is just to give you information and let you make the decision on if this game is worth it for you or not. So I'm not just trying to sell it. With the new starter kit and the new battle host boxes, a lot of new players are getting into this game, so we'll see if it's the right game for you as well. There's four main topics that I'm going to cover in this video. Firstly, is the game fun? How much does the game cost? How easy is it to get the models? And finally, what's the community for the game like? Let's start with the most important one, which is, of course, is the game fun? If it's not fun, there's no point getting into it. And my answer to this one is yes, absolutely. Middle-earth plays quite differently to the other Games Workshop games. Every model is an individual, so they can go off and move however they like. There's no silly unit coherencies or anything like that. And with army building, you have a lot of freedom. There's none of this silly HQ elite troop stuff. It's just heroes and troops. You need heroes to lead troops, and then there's factions as well. A Rivendell hero can lead any of the Rivendell troops. There's no limit on cavalry, there's no limit on cool, fun troops. The only limit is that you can only take 1/3 bows, and certain armies have ways of getting around that anyway. In the game, there are a heap of awesome thematic moments where heroes go up against heroes, fight off hordes, and slay great monsters. The heroes really are the most fun and exciting part of this game, and all of their rule profiles really reflect how they are in the lore and in the films. Narrative is a huge part of this game. There's a lot of thematic scenarios that you can play, which are exact moments from the stories. And a lot of players build their competitive armies around themes. For example, this tournament winning list was themed around Helm Hammerhand, the man who built Helm's Deep. And importantly, this game feels like how I think a battle would actually play out in my head as someone who has not participated in a medieval battle. And positioning is absolutely key. There's a lot of resource management and some micromanagement stuff going on in this game. So if you're not the biggest fan of that, then maybe that's a negative. But if you do like resource management, then this is definitely a great game for you. Middle-earth is always described as a game that is easy to learn but hard to master. It is absolutely a game of skill. While there still are dice involved, there's so much tactics to it with the resource management, all the maneuvering, that the skill cap is infinite. And once you think you've gotten as good as you can with one army, well, there's 40 more armies to try out. Overall, Middle-earth has the best rules for terrain out of any war game that I've played, and I have played quite a lot. The terrain works exactly like how it should. If there's a fence in the way, you can climb over the fence or you can defend the fence. If something's in the way of a model, it makes it harder to shoot at it. All this stuff just makes sense and the rules really reflect that and do it in a very easy and elegant way. So I think the game is a heap of fun. Alright, let's get into the costs. How expensive is this game? And the answer to that is it very heavily depends on what faction you want to play, similar to quite a few other war games as well. If you want to play one of the main factions like Mordor, Gondor, Rohan, or Isengard, which now have their battle host boxes and Gondor and Mordor appear in the starter kit, it's really easy to get into. A battle host box comes in at 150 Australian dollars. To get a fully playable and decently competitive army, you're going to need the battle host box as well as a couple other heroes. You could do this for roughly 200 Australian dollars, 150 US or 120 euro. This would be a great start to any army, and there's more stuff that you could add, but it wouldn't be required straight away. If you start out with the starter kit, which is 350 Australian, it gives you two really decent starting points. You could add the battle host into either of those armies to make a big army, or just add a couple other heroes and troops and you'll be good to go. In general with Middle-earth, it's played between 300 and 1,000 points, which is a humongous range, so say 500 to 750 is more normal. Depending on your army, that could just be 10 models, or it could be up to 50-ish models. Most 750 point armies will have around the 35 area, which means it's decently low model count, so again contributing to it not being very expensive. Now, another example of a cheap army is my army of Thror. Now, these guys sent me back 200 Australian dollars, and I've played probably 30 or 40 games with them and painted them up and had a lot of fun with that. So my hours of enjoyment per dollar are insanely efficient. That being said, not all factions are cheap. When the Battle of Five Armies came out, Games Workshop decided that the armies in there would all come out in Finecast, which have now been updated to a different type of resin, but it means that those ones are costly, coming in at about 100 Australian, or I think that's about 70 US for a warband of 12 guys. If you compare that to the plastics, which is 70 Australian or 50 US, I think, for 24 guys, they are a lot more expensive. Now, those aren't the only ones that are expensive. There's also some armies that are all metal. I personally love metal models, but it means they are more costly. You're paying $22 for a set of 3, Australian dollars that is, or up to 100 for a warband of 12. So those armies can easily come in to around $500 once you have all the troops that you need and all the heroes that you need. There's also some factions that exist solely on Forge World, like the Iron Hill Dwarves. Being on Forge World is going to make them a lot more expensive. Some of the miniatures are relatively old. A lot of them still stand up, but some of them are definitely in need of an update, which Games Workshop is slowly doing with the big main heroes, but we haven't got any new plastic troops. It's only been heroes or Forge World releases so far. The second-hand sales community is very active for Middle-earth, and if you want to get involved in that, jump in some of the buy, sell, swap Facebook pages that are linked in the description down below. You'll easily be able to pick up armies for probably half of retail depending on how good a deal you get. There's quite a lot of plastic troops that you're able to do for $1 each, so if you want a horde of Moria Goblins, definitely buy them secondhand, because that'll make them way cheaper, but not as easy to access. Now the next thing that we need to talk about is how easy is it to actually access these models, and this is probably the biggest detriment that Middle-earth has. Middle-earth has over 40 completely different factions that have their own playstyles and their own miniatures. And at the moment, a lot of things are out of stock at Games Workshop. Now, even as this video ages, I don't think that's necessarily going to change because it's been this way for quite a while now, which is making it a bit harder to get into the game when there's a lot of models that are listed there but are out of stock. Now, the glass half full person might say, hey, this is great, that means heaps of new people are starting in the game. But of course, the negative side of that is it's harder to get the models that you want all the time. Now, all of these ones that are out of stock do come back, but they generally then sell out again relatively quickly. So if there's something that you want, join the emailing list. They'll send you an email as soon as it's back in stock and you'll be able to pick it up. But it is a bit frustrating not being able to get the models that you want straight away. On top of that, there are some of the niche factions that are completely out of production. A good example of this is Arnor. Not a heap of people know about Arnor. It's an all-metal faction from the old days of the game, and currently you can't buy all the models for it. Now, this isn't a huge problem because, honestly, very few people actually are interested in this faction, but if it happens to be the one that you are interested in, that can be a bit frustrating. All of the main factions are very well covered and will have the models in production, but some of them might be out of stock here and there. And again, everything that is sold out is generally sold out because lots of people have bought it, making it relatively common, so you can find a lot of things on the second-hand market. And another thing that makes the game a lot more accessible is 3D printing. There are 3 big 3D printing creators. We've got Mebri Miniatures, Davale, and Kurzlach's Miniatures. All of them are linked down in the description below, and between the 3 of them, they cover almost all of the factions. Not quite all of them yet, but a lot of the factions are able to be 3D printed. Even if you don't have a 3D printer, there are heaps of stores who are selling these models readily printed. Not only is this much cheaper than Games Workshop, but it also means all those out of production things you'll be able to get alternatives for. The quality of sculpts is really, really nice as well. A vast majority of tournaments are totally fine with 3D prints. For example, at my tournament that I ran about a month ago, a lot of the prizes were actually 3D prints. Alright, and let's get to our fourth point. Is the community for this game good? And the only answer to that is absolutely yes. I'm speaking from an Australian perspective here, so it could change around the world, but based on what I've seen online, I reckon that you're going to have a pretty similar experience. Middle-earth is a game that's driven by theme, and that's really reflected in the players. People want to play cool armies that represent their favorite moments from the stories or books, and a lot of the time here in Australia, people are willing to put aside how strong their army is just to bring some cool options. This means that rather than people just power gaming and bringing filthy combos, they want to bring the cool options. The game rules also incentivize this, making some thematic armies better for sticking to the theme, but it's an attitude that people had well before those rules existed. There are tournaments all over the world. Europe is definitely the mecca of Middle-earth gaming, with heaps of tournaments happening all the time. Here in Victoria, Australia, we'll have a tournament once every couple of months, and other places in Australia are having tournaments more frequently than we are. All across the US there's tournaments, and of course the main place for tournaments is going to be Great Britain, where Games Workshop comes from, where the game is absolutely massive. The biggest tournament in the world, Articon, had about 200 players last year. So it shouldn't be too hard to find heaps of other people who are interested in playing Middle-earth with you. Through playing Middle-earth, I've met a heap of people who I can call friends for life. One of them, Sean, I flew up and stayed with for 5 days in Brisbane just to play Middle-earth, so that goes to show the kind of people you can meet in this community. So, there's all the information on the Middle-earth strategy battle game. Hopefully I've given you enough information that you can make your own decision on whether or not this is going to be the game for you. I know that getting into this game is one of the best things that I have ever done, and if you do decide this is the game for you, I hope that you have a similar experience. This has been Conquest Creations. Thank you for watching.